Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. There was a title that approached me, and I felt like maybe sharing a little about it. I think I have found one of the only unique and symmetrical sentences in the English language, and it's a question: are we what we are? And I've written something else in the subtitle, but I will explain it a bit later on. Pretty much I am wondering about how would I say it? It's as if, are we just this? Are we more? Is there something more going on, a completely different narrative of reality, a completely different version of the world that is happening? And so this question is one of those questions that expands into different directions based on the dimensions we see through. I wanted to, before I begin, kind of pinpoint where this episode fits in philosophy. You see, philosophy, its word comes from love of wisdom, philosophia. And human beings opened their eyes and began asking what is going on. That is pretty much the origin of all philosophy. Everybody's philosophy is a response to this world that is an event that is happening, that we find ourselves in. Now, philosophy has three major branches. I'll share these. There is axiology, what is right. That's concerned with ethics and aesthetics, how things look. For example, right and wrong fall into this category, you can say. Then we have epistemology, how do we know what we know? And for that, there's a dimension of experience, which is wondering about, for example, the authority we have in our experience. You know, somebody saying that I know this because I'm seeing it, you know. Then there is the reasoning component, where we know something by reasoning it. And there's also ways where it's being constructed, you can see. That means what we know is under construction. Then we have the juiciest part of philosophy, you can say metaphysics, where meta means after, and physics is when we're considering reality as so. What is after reality? And in a shorter sense, what is real? So metaphysics is concerned about what is real, and for, I would say, a majority of the population, this question maybe doesn't arise, you know, because what we see, we take it for real, we don't question it. Do you know, people are trying to function in reality, it's as if like they're trying to fit into reality. If you're trying to fit into something, when will you ever question what is it that you're fitting into? You know, it's like from the moment you're born, you're being dressed up by the outer realms, you know. And people just want to wear the clothing sooner rather than wonder what is this cloth made of. It's the same with reality. Now, in metaphysics, we have two branches of ontology and cosmology. You can say ontology is wondering about questions about existence and being. And we have cosmology, where we're wondering about the whole universe, how is it being housed here? And from these two branches, I feel a goes multiple ways, and sometimes they're interconnected. But anyways, the topic of tonight's episode is concerned with ontology and its relationship to experience, I guess, also a bit of epistemology. So that's just giving it structure. To be honest, the question, when things are found in our experience, they are of a different nature, you know. So I guess as one human being on a rock in the middle of nowhere, among 8 billion human beings, among billions of trillions of stars, I will, through my incredible cheerful attitude, share some ideas here. So I have had a fascination of the mind for a while. When I was very young, well, not very young, but when I was young, I was introduced to the ideas of religion. I was introduced to a spiritual perspective also. But both of them seemed to care for something that was more than the mind. You know, in for example, certain religions, in the Islamic religion, there's the word akhl, you know, and it's as if, like, from a theological lens, it's seen as if you have been given intelligence. The Creator created intelligence, an ability for you to understand the creation. You see. And from the spiritual perspective, the mind was like the lift-off platform into a reality that surpasses the mind. So it's as if when I think about my own youth, it was as if I was given perspectives, or the first waves of information that hit me about the meaning of reality, as if my view on what does this whole thing mean. Mystical dimension had been responded to ideologically, not experientially, and pretty much I was given world stories. The mind, however, was seen to be unknown, and I would say that was what really drew me into wondering about the nature of reality, where we all say we have minds, but if you ask someone what the mind is, they might just say, "It's me, man, what are you asking?" You know, but the mind can surpass or can be part of an equation that we have failed yet to understand, you know. When we look at this world, sometimes the way I engage philosophy is that I wonder about it in two ways. One, like from a personal way, where I'm like, okay, if I was just teleported into the world and I had to, from scratch, figure it out, what would it mean to me? And then there's other modalities where I think if something else, if for example an alien landed down on Earth, how would it in some sense try to comprehend this world that we're seeing? And so this is where it gets a bit tricky, and it is left in the domain of abstraction, where if it has multiple dimensions or if it has singular dimensions. And for a long time I thought it was just multiplicity, singularity. But then there came ideas of the void and ideas of the infinite. And so it's like when a human being is born, I think the audio may be too loud. To continue, when a person is born, they have access to what we call reality, and I would say the earliest classification we can have is of space and matter, what is there and what isn't there. Do you know? So you can say it is the known and the unknown. I think every person, you ask them, what is it that you don't know? Do you know they know that they don't know some things, but what it specifically is they don't. So it's as if we are this creature that is just accumulating. I mean, think of the biological intelligence that we are. It's kind of like this bioneural camera. It's like our neurology is leading to the brain, and the brain is ultimately a perceiver or a receiver of the senses. And so this brain exists to receive. Now, it is a physical thing. Nobody can ignore their body, but at the same time, what is mobilizing the body, navigating the body, doesn't seem to be physical. And the greatest clue that there's another dimension, that means it's like a human being opens their eyes and something is happening. Their relationship with that something is like on an object level, and physically, like that's where the experience comes in. And then there's a subjective level where it's as if a person can close their eyes and calculate 2 + 2 = 4, rather than having like two things in front of them plus 2 other things in front of them equaling 4 things. Rather than seeing the 4 things, they can either you can say in the domain of their mind fathom it. So reality, I would say, at least, I mean, this is my talk, but I would suggest that it is in some sense, first of all, appearing on 2 levels, 2 dimensions. Now, the separation of these 2 dimensions, René Descartes talked about the mind-body dualism, and he chose a method of skepticism, you know. But nobody can ignore how there is something of the nature of imagination. Like, even though right now, like, my voice is, and you can say, in a physical domain, my body's in a physical domain, but what the sounds mean, that means just like we look at letters on ink on a piece of paper and it means something to us, similarly the sound we're generating, it's just sound, but it has meaning. And so the question is, how is the mind generating meaning? And so it seems to be it's receiving something, as if it's receiving a visual image, a visual, it's like, you know what it is? It's like our bodies are in the film, our minds are watching the film. You know, and even if this classification between objects and subjects isn't mysterious enough, we have also emotions. Do you know that means a person can have their behavior can change in accordance to what they find in front of their eyes? I call that outer ones. And in regards to what happens behind their eyes in their inner one, do you know, they can have an emotional reaction. It's as if when somebody is just hearing beautiful music, something causes, you know, or if somebody is hearing a story and it's a very profound story, they suddenly get emotional. So it's as if this whole time that the body has been happening and it's visible, it seems like in an invisible dimension where somehow without light there's still visibility of us closing our eyes and being able to visualize or being able to receive memory. It's as if there is something more here. Okay, there's something that is surpassing, that is watching the object and the subject. Now, I would say in my quest to figure this out, this mystery of reality, recently I have come to a very interesting conclusion. First of all, if there's the dimension of the objects, that's like one dimension. If there's a dimension where subjects move, that's another dimension. And if there's a dimension where objects and subjects are being watched at the same time, which is where decision making happens, so that is in some sense three dimensions, three considerations of dimensions. And in my youth, I was acquainted with this, the trio. You can say this is a model of perception where we're saying there's body, mind, and soul. The relationship of, you can say, the mind with the body is that when an individual being, let's say, is climbing a tree, the mind is creating the body. The mind is being the force, the guiding force of the body. You know, in a strange way, this ancient concept of guardian angels, it's as if every person's mind is a guardian angel of their body. It is what is preserving it, it is what is keeping it around in the dimension, and above all, if the individual chooses to serve the realm, then it is the source of serving reality, serving the world. That means if we want to make this a better place, it is not identifying with body, just the body isn't helpful. There has to be an identification with the mind, and the mind has to have a supreme, I shouldn't say supreme, but should have a sort of authority attitude where it's in some sense accepts something as itself and then functions it, you know. It's like you can't ride a motorcycle if you're not on the motorcycle. And so it's as if when we wake up, this intelligence of our mind accepts the body and then it navigates in it. You know, it's as if as if some sort of non-physical intelligence is seated or is driving the physical embodiment's activities. In some systems of thought about philosophy and ontology, I forgot to mention this, there is three categories given. So you, excuse me. Excuse me. To continue, there is three categories of realism, idealism, materialism. Materialism is wondering about, it's in some sense a view where things are just, it's only the physical reality here, and the mind is in some sense relevant to that physical reality. There is idealism, where it's, you can say it is your subjective domain of reality. It is the sort of ideal, it's as if our inner realms are real. And then there's a sort of realism, you can say the category of realism, where in realism there is something externally. It's as if there is physical reality and there is, in some sense, the subjective nature of the experiencer, but they are independent. So what that means is whatever we're experiencing, there's something else. There's something more beyond it, as if beyond reality. So, back to what I was saying about the trial model of the soul, mind, body. And this is where I think due to my voice, I have to cut this episode a bit short. But so in regards to soul, mind, body, I want to read for you a poem that is shared by this Sufi mystic called Rumi. So the poem written by the Sufi mystic poet Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi, he says how the grape seed transcended itself. So think of this poem as like the relationship of our subjective dimension of reality with its objective dimension of reality and its ultimate destination. How the grape seed transcended itself. Through companionship, a grape grows from the earth. But first, a grape seed graciously consorted in solitary intercourse with the dark earth. It effaced itself entirely in the ground until no color or scent, no red or yellow hue remained. After that effacement, its construction ceased. It opened its wings, expanded, and sped on its way. Since it became selfless in the presence of its origin, it transcended its limited form, and its real essence was revealed. So, this connects into the subtitle. So the poet Rumi is saying that it's as if something that was just pure potential through itself in the darkness of the earth, it became effaced. That means it was no longer itself was gone. And then it in some sense expanded, arose, and this is where it says, where Rumi is saying, become selfless in the presence of your origin, where it became selfless in the presence of its origin. And the true essence was revealed, the real essence of it was revealed. So this is where I'll just share this theory and end the episode. We're looking at a world where there's human beings in it. These human beings are wondering, what do we do? And as they go forth, they have a relationship with the physics of reality, how they're being a creature, a sort of form. Then they have a relationship with their mind in regards to what does this form mean? And then the nature of the mind is that it works in accordance to stories. A branch of something that you can say falls into philosophy is logic, and logic is pretty much how you are managing your reasoning. right? So now the question is coming that there's this object that is in some sense being a subject, and that's how it's moving. And so the question is, how is a subject managing the subjects on the object? Now there have been people who they in some sense just are inclined towards the materialistic perspective. For them it is in some sense trial and error. But you can say at the same time in history we have this concept of the logos that was this inner guiding voice, and it's as if in the inner realms, in that subjective dimension, there is something beyond this attention that is watching the objects and subjects that is in a relationship with the mind. So it's as if our bodies belong to the earth, our minds belong to the logos, or to this sort of intelligent urge that is moving the subjective domain. That means it's like we are co-pilots in the outer realms with the physical earth. We are co-pilots with the non-physical river of intelligence called it logos. Now, this is where I was thinking of the notion and this idea of the angel, and the angel is being depicted in through a certain light, as if the difference between the archetype of the angel and the archetype of the human being is that the angel, the human being, has free will, the angel has divine will, and divine will is the suggestion that in some sense the angel can't do what it wants. In some sense it is, as long as it is ascended or in the heavenly archetype or in the heavenly domain, it is the will of God. So the angel is like the emanation of the sun. It is the will of the sun. Think of it as if instead of the sun, God, and the light comes our angels. So one's relationship, when you look at mysticism, it wasn't about just following your intuition. That was a sort of phase where there were synchronicities and whatever. After that, you became one with, in some sense, that with the mind's movement, as if you started as a body with a mind, and then you become a mind that is moving all the bodies in the experience. Not just your biological body, the whole content of your moment, of your sensory moment. So it's as if a human being, the free will, is going through an evolution through a mystical sense of trying to find its true nature, and the yogis would say, abide by your true nature, abide by your true nature. That means in some sense trusting the intelligent flow of your mind, and as you go with it, you begin to realize you are neither the body or the mind, right? So in some sense it's in some sense free will is an illusion of a higher dimension, or the shadow of higher dimensions. If the higher dimensions are seen to go in accordance to a divine will or a universal will or a collective will of some sort. So I was thinking that if human beings, in some sense there's another narrative. So the topic is, are we what we are? And so if we think we are just individuals, it's as if we are actually collective. The way a collective functions, I would say, is in a harmony with everything that is constituting it. But the individual functions only with the harmony of the limited range of considerations of self it has. So it's as if I'm wondering, this angel archetype, which was not of its own free will but divine will, pretty much, if the future is a collective intelligence, that means the past was an individual embodied doer, and the future will be in some sense a collective beyond the body being. And so if the future is of that, then there is a phase where all these individual archetypes realize themselves in a collective archetype. What that means is it's as if, like, imagine you froze a drop of water in the freezer, and then you threw this drop of water in a river. That drop of water is individual, it feels it has its free will, but the moment it surpasses its free will, it begins to see that it is the river. right? So it's as if our egos are melting in the river of a sort of universally collective will. Do you know? And so the nature of a collective being is that an individual can be pinpointed in space and time, but the collective being is everywhere in time. So it's as if the God that many people have been praying to, in some sense, can be suggested to be the future that is a collective being, right? And so it's like the notion of worship is like the surrender. They have this huge concept of surrendering, not just religious practices, but in mystical surrendering what? The ego. And what is the ego? It is the individual sense of self. So in some sense, it's the surrender of an individual acceptance of reality into a recognition that the river was here before the drop of ice was frozen in it. You see, so it's as if you take even see parallels to Buddhic thought, it's like how you get out of the wheel of karma is by becoming the wheel. And once you become the wheel, you're no longer in the wheel. You see? So if this idea keeps going forth, that all these individual human beings, what we call the individual human, it's a phase. It's a phase in a sort of progression towards one collective being. You know what it is? This may be a bold statement to say, but it's as if, imagine there was an invisible giant cloud, and this invisible giant cloud came on Earth and surrounded the planet and now began moving everything on the planet. As it began moving everything on the planet, it's as if its whole attempt is to see itself again. Do you know? So it's as if rather than the visible, the invisible is sandwiched between two different kinds of visible. Do you know? It's like the visible is sandwiched between an unconscious invisible and a conscious invisible, and the conscious invisible means no longer visible, right? So I'm saying that it's as if, first of all, everything is energy. We say energy cannot be created or destroyed, it just transforms from form to form. It's as if this energy, if it was synonymous with consciousness, it's as if this consciousness is going through a transformation just to realize that energy cannot be created or destroyed. And what do they say about truth? If there is truth, it is here. It is here before we were. Do you see? It is not a sort of projected truth. Those are, you can say, spears thrown at a limitless sky, limited spears thrown at a limitless sky. So in some sense, it's as if the whole point of being a limited being is so that there is a proper introduction to the limitless. And if the limitless is a collective being, invisible collective being in the future, and we as all creatures in the realm are just endlessly journeying into becoming a conscious memory of an invisible collective being. You know, you can say a visible conscious memory of an invisible being. Do you know? If all of this is going that way, at some point we will see, this is the prediction I'm making, if the future is in some sense a collective being, then we will begin seeing signs of collective minds. And when I say collective minds, not technologically made, we will begin seeing, you can say, as if like human beings all over the planet, their behaviors becoming in some sense on the same rhythm. Do you see? So it's as if we begin getting signs that there's a collective being in all these individual beings, these 8 billion individual beings, and their behaviors, right? So it's as if, like, you see, right now the notion of change is that somebody's trying to do something good, and we hope that kind of sparks the fire in others. But what I'm saying is, when you begin seeing naturally, prior to any indoctrination, prior to any feeding of information, right, you begin seeing a massive behavioral change, and that behavior is synchronized. So what that means is, you can say, natural, it's as if one being in multiple bodies, but those bodies still have their own sovereignty, but it's as if when they trust the invisible, and many people don't realize, so many people criticize religion, but they don't understand, the first thing written in religious texts is that this book is for those who have faith in the invisible. That means the book is not only a materialistic evaluation, not something. It's as if the book is meant to be read from 2 rooms or more than 2 rooms. But if you read it only in one room, then you're like, it's just ink on a piece of paper. Nothing means anything. You know. So it's very easy to break a house of cards. It's much more harder to figure out how it is being held up, or how it is there, or what is truly the mysteries of this realm that is keeping it here. You know. You know what it is? If karma was also seen as rivers, and every person who has a karma, do you know, it's as if how they lived causally in the past is suggesting that a future effect. So what that means is karma is like a river, right? It's like a way a person caused some things, and then they can go against their own cause, or in some sense the effect can trust its cause and then have momentum. So it's as if karma is rivers, so it's as if minds are like streams, and so a collective mind is like a big river where all these streams are coming to, right? And behaviorally, in the social dimension of individual human beings on the planet, I feel that's, if it becomes more and more collective, it's as if it's like the collective being is remembering itself, let's say through like 1 million people, then through 2 million people, and then through 3 million, then it keeps going, and we begin seeing that it's as if that for the individual ideological construct, there is, and this may be a strange way of saying it, but there is no escape. There is no escape if from the beginning it's a collective situation here. So you see, what is the illusion of reality? In a lot of mystical texts, poems, I shouldn't say poems, quotes, I'll read for you some of them from certain yogis. They have this notion where they are saying, what you see, take yourself as to be, is the illusion. And as long as you take yourself to be that, of course, it's as if it's incomplete. But if there is an inquiry into what the self truly is, one comes into a recognition that the mind is them. So it's as if our bodies are making us see just the corner of the picture, but once we identify as a mind, which is just the presence of the whole moment, we begin recognizing that beyond personalities, beyond the game of archetypes held hidden in the collective unconscious, there is that true nature, as the poem Rumi here, what was the poem? He says, since it became selfless in the presence of its origin, it transcended its limited form, and its real essence was revealed. That real essence could be in some sense the urge of a collective being to remember itself beyond all the ways it has been fragmented. You know, in ancient Greece, there was the concept of the Titans, and there was this notion that the gods chained the Titans, right? And if you think of a collective being, just to give it some sort of mythos, it's as if an invisible collective being was chained, was in some sense pushed into being in endless myriad forms. So it's as if we are the Titan's chains, do you know? The chains of an invisible collective being. Do you see? Now that's one context I'm saying it, but in some sense it's as if there will come a time where the Titan will break the chain, right? And when I say break the chain, it's as if once the invisible remembers itself beyond the visible, there is no content. There is no content, and right now our whole world is based on its content, you know? Not even like YouTubers who are all looking for content, but it's all the world. You know, you can say human thought is a reaction to a happening, something that is happening, and we're not even sure it's a thing. That's the mystery of reality. You know, this is the whole point of ontology. So on this way of individuals becoming a collective being, a visible individuals becoming an invisible collective, they will transition from free will into universal will. Now that transition from free will to universal will, it would suggest the whole point of how many traditions they're like, be selfless, be selfless. You know, it's as if, they're like, what is love? Love is selflessness. You know, you're paying attention to the other. It's as if yourself is not more important than that which you love, right? Think of, for example, like parents or whatever. Think of like, you know, the great lovers of history, Romeo and Juliet. It's as if what they loved surpassed themselves, right? So through selflessness, it's as if the way 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere can build an advanced civilization is by becoming selfless. And so it's as if the advanced civilization, if it is the collective mind in the future, it is building itself. So all that human beings require to do is find a way to remember their nature, which surpasses objects and subjects, beyond the story that is encapsulating their reality. And this whole talk is in a metaphysical and mystical context, so keep that in mind. So this would render us in the future, in the transition from individual form into the collective formless, as becoming the divine will. So we become guardian angels of the species in some sense, you know. So that means that's a future phase. I want to read a poem from Rumi, another one. He says, the poem is called The Real Enemy. He says, if you have subdued your egoism, you no longer have to make excuses. Nobody in the world remains your enemy. If anyone doubts my words about the prophets and saints and should ask, didn't the prophets subdue their egoism? So why did they have enviers and enemies? Listen, O seeker of truth. Let's solve this difficulty and doubt. Those who were deniers were really enemies to themselves. They were striking at themselves the blows that they struck. An enemy is one who strikes at another's life. Someone destroying his own life is not an enemy to others. And the next poem is called The Veils of Light. The light of God has gradations, 700 veils of light. Behind each veil, a certain class of saints has its place in the world. These veils of theirs ascend, rank by rank, up to the finest leader. Those in the lowest rank, through the weakness of their eyes, can't endure the brighter light, and those at the highest ranks blink at the light that is still more advanced. The light that is the vibrant life of the highest rank is heartache and tribulation to the one who squints, but his squinting little by little subsides until he passes beyond the 700 veils and becomes the ocean of light. That ocean of light is the destiny of an endless physical existence into a conscious, collective being's knowing. It's like, honestly, we're in the imagination of a higher being. We are inside it. It's as if we are a memory of the gods. Now I would like to go into a quote tunnel, or actually there is something I want to read. Hold on. I wanted to share something about Kant and Descartes. So you see, Descartes, in regards to ontology, he had, I'll just read it for you. He says, skeptical doubt initiates subversion of metaphysics, rise of epistemology, central rule of mind, dualism of mind and matter. So it's as if what reality is, Descartes doubted it, and that became a process of one how to know reality. And his conclusion came that the mind is in its own dimension and matter is in its own dimension. Then we have someone such as Immanuel Kant, where I would say my own philosophies kind of go towards this, where so many times in these episodes I've said that I don't believe we are creatures of language. Kant says reality is unknowable, metaphysics is impossible, we can only know the quasi-fictional domains which we ourselves create. Yeah, because what are we left with? We're left with our own, the ink of our own pen, you know? Pretty much beyond the object and subject, Immanuel Kant is saying you can't know it through a subject and object. Now into a cold tunnel, and I'll end this episode. These quotes are from a man named Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj. He says consciousness is prior to the world. The knower is prior to consciousness. The knower of consciousness is infinite and eternal. One who is prior to the body is the knower. God is knowingness. Surrender to him. He is also the Atman. He is the world. And Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj is in India. He's passed away, but he's an enlightened, you can say, Indian mystic, Indian yogi. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, who says that he seeks silence? Earlier I presumed that I was created. Later, after listening to my guru, I understood that the experience was created or appeared, but not me. The creation of this beingness, this experience, is a result of the 5 elements and their interactions. With the view I was created, with the view in quotations I was created, come the fears of life and death. I just prevail as a result of the 5 elements, and this experience of beingness is created for no reason. I, the Absolute, am not the created. It excludes the Absolute. The observer behind the telescope is not the created. The object has been created. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says all happiness comes from awareness. The more we are conscious, the deeper the joy. Acceptance of pain, non-resistance, courage, and endurance, these open, deep, and perennial sources of real happiness, true bliss. So in this one there is a questioner. Questioner asks Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, the mind is so absolutely restless. For quieting it, what is the way? Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, just turn away from all that occupies the mind. Do whatever work you have to complete, but avoid new obligations. Keep empty, keep available. Resist not what comes uninvited. In the end, you reach a state of non-grasping, of joyful non-attachment, of inner ease and freedom indescribable, yet wonderfully real. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, do not consider yourself as an individual. It is the root cause of fear. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, there's a question. Sometimes it is said that it is all void, but one who understands the void is... this is Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj saying. Sometimes it is said that it is all void, but one who understands the void, is he void? Meditate in such a way that you even forget that you are meditating. Truth will reveal itself when one forgets oneself. We are not what we know. We are prior to knowing. One who has understood this has no need to sit in meditation. Questioner, would Maharaj speak about the guru and disciple relationship? Maharaj, the guru links the relationship of the disciple with self-knowledge, and the disciple nourishes it. The guru links you to self-knowledge, that is you. Guru, nourish it. The knowledge you are is the guru. Once linked, don't disturb the relationship by identifying with the body. Once a woman is married to a man, it's done. Each must behave accordingly. Once linked with the guru, you must not identify with the body. The knowledge you are, be there with full devotion. The knowledge I am is not the body. Nisargadatta Maharaj says you are because you are, your world is. You are lost in the names and titles imprinted on that world. Give up the habit of labeling whatever you are. Be what you were prior to the label or title. Be that. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says nothing dies. The body is just imagined. There is no such thing. From an inner position, I believe he's saying this. Nisargadatta Maharaj says that means it's even beyond inner outer. Nisargadatta Maharaj says there is love for the word as long as there is ignorance. After knowledge, there is no use of words. After realization, the sense I am is still there, but the attitude of the mind is entirely changed. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says that remember, he says a remembrance of what I am is the knowledge of what you are. Maharaj added, you might see the whole universe as a dream, but so long as there is a you seeing this dream as a separate entity, you will be in trouble. Let us hope gradually you will come to realize that you are also a dreamed figure in this living dream, and an integral part of the dream, and not someone apart and separate from it. Then you will be all right. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says the Atman is eternal. You think that you are consciousness. However, the knower is witnessing consciousness. Consciousness is not eternal. The knower is. The world is within consciousness. When consciousness goes, the world goes. Then what does the witness have to lose? Questioner, what is death? Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, death is also a hearsay. Have you experienced death? Having followed the course of spirituality, you have come to the end of personality, and there is no more human being. There is only impersonal consciousness. In the realm of consciousness, all that is going on is dynamic playfulness, a process of functioning. There is no differentiation in this process as to a person, an entity, a community, a creed, a religion. In the flash of your consciousness, all this play is going on. The play will come to an end. Questioner, but ultimately, is there a world or is there none? Maharaj, what you see is nothing but yourself. Call it what you like, it does not change the fact. Through the film of destiny, your own light depicts pictures on the screen. You are the viewer, the light in the picture and the screen. Even the film of destiny, Parabda, is self-selected and self-imposed. The spirit is a sport and enjoys to overcome obstacles. The harder the task, the deeper and wider is self-realization. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he says reality is not an event, it cannot be experienced, it is not perceivable in the same way. He's talking about the ultimate reality. He's saying it is not perceivable in the same way as an event is perceivable. If you wait for an event to take place, for the coming of reality, you will wait forever, for reality neither comes nor goes. Excuse me. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, be friends with consciousness. When it is pleased, it will reveal itself to you. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, without the body, how can the idea, in quotations, I am not the body, come into being? The idea, in quotations, I am free, is as false as the idea, in quotations, I am in bondage. Find out the, in quotations, I am, common to both, and go beyond. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says people keep themselves busy because they find it difficult to bear their own consciousness. People look for various entertainments to escape from themselves. The greatest challenge lies in looking at oneself, sitting alone by oneself. Questioner: when do I know that I have discovered truth? Maharaj: when the idea this is true, that is true does not arise. Truth does not assert itself. It is in the seeing of the false as false and rejecting it. It is useless to search for truth. When the mind is blind to the false, it must be purged of the false completely before truth can dawn on it. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says the here in quotations is everywhere, and the now in quotations always. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says you do not suffer, only the person you imagine yourself to be suffers. You cannot suffer. So if the true nature of reality is collective beyond thought, beyond objects and subjects, then how can an object and subject affect it? One last thing I'm going to say, that's the end for the quote tunnel. I think it was a few days ago, I was waiting for a pizza, believe it or not. And outside the pizza place, I was just walking around and I was thinking about this nature of the body and the mind. And I came up with an approach to it, which I'm going to share before I end off. So I was thinking, how do I know, while I was walking, waiting for that pizza, I was thinking, okay, how do I know that I am a body right now? And then I realized I know it because there is a mind. Then I asked myself, how do I know I'm a mind? Because I know that I am aware of my body and I'm seeing it happen. It's as if we say the mind is in the body, right? The mind is moving the body, right? But the mind is not a shape. You know, it's like a space where shapes, inner realm shapes and outer realm shapes come and go. So to me, I suddenly realized, okay, so the mind is not an object, but it's moving objects. Then I thought that could it be that what the soul is, it's like the same parallels where it's as if the mind is the body of the soul, right? So the same way the mind is aware of its body, it's as if the soul is the same way the soul is aware of the mind. And so the mind feels invisible compared to the body. So I felt that, okay, so the soul is the greater, it's like the second level of invisible, to the mind. So it's as if when we feel our mind is a body, then we are that collective being. So it's as if at the root of our sight, which is at the center of our consciousness, it's as if we say that the mind is beyond the body and it's aware of the body, it's like as if the soul is beyond the mind and it is aware of the mind. So it's as if we have to not only surpass an objective identification, but we have to surpass a subjective identification, and we have to surpass the identification that we are part of the sphere of our awareness. Rather, we are all of it. So it's as if when you can see your body, you're a mind, and when you can see your mind, you're a soul. And that soul is inseparable from all categories of realism. So what clue do we get? We see that the same moment we see a body and we accept that we're a body, it's a mind there. And so when we accept that reality is the mind, then we are that. That which the yogis would say, you are that. You're not this, you're that. that transcended this. So if we were to give some sort of answer to are we what we are, If we identify with the body, it's like we're not it. The answer is no. If we identify with the mind, as I read from certain yogis, and in my own experience of being able to watch my thoughts and then share it with people. So to the mind, the answer is, are we what we are? No. But when it comes to that core presence, are we what we are? It's as if we have always been. It's as if beyond time, being is not segmented. Anyways, guys, I hope this episode had some sort of value for people. Anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. And one last thing to say. Become selfless in the presence of your origin, whatever that is, whether it is clothed in subjects or it is apparent through objects. Become selfless in the presence of your origin. Wonder about what is selflessly present as an origin to all the variations of our sense of self and sense of subjective self. That means go beyond until you are the beyond. Namaste.